Good evening. This is James Exum coming to you from my studio in South Austin, Texas. It's approximately 9 o'clock on Tuesday, August 11th, and the presentation tonight, the video I'm recording tonight, is called The Human Mind. So let's go straight to the narration.
The Human Mind, James H. Exum / Yogi Sakshi, Austin, Texas. Copyrighted August 11th, 2026. All rights reserved. From these writings, one sentence may be drawn as the governing spirit of the whole inquiry. The mind is a brilliant storyteller, but liberation begins when the story is watched from the seat of the witness. Sakshi. This is a discourse in the light of the witness. To recognize the powers of the mind, do not rush upon it as a conqueror. Sit before it as Sakshi, the witnessing awareness that observes experience without being consumed by it. The mind is a river of attention, memory, imagination, judgment, desire, and habit. Yet there is also that quiet presence which watches the river flow. True examination begins when one no longer says only, I am my thoughts, but softly perceives, thoughts are arising before me. What is the mind? The mind may be understood as chit, the mental field in which thoughts, memories, emotions, impressions, and perceptions arise. It is the inward instrument through which a person knows the world, forms identity, remembers the past, imagines the future, and chooses a path. Yet yogic thought does not mistake this moving field for the deepest self. The mind changes. The witness knows eternal change. Where is the mind found? The mind is most closely associated with the brain and nervous system in scientific language. But in yogic reflection, it is not confined to one small chamber of flesh. It is expressed through breath, posture, speech, memory, conduct, relationship, and intention. The brain may be called the physical organ. The mind is the subtler movement of experience. In yoga, the inquiry goes still deeper. Who is aware of the brain, the body, and the thoughts? That silent knower is approached through drashta, the seer that beholds without grasping. Major components of the mind. Consciousness, the field of awareness in which a person experiences thoughts, sensations, feelings, and choices. Perception, the power by which the mind receives and interprets information from the senses. Attention, the power of selecting and holding focus upon one object, idea, or task. Memory, the power to retain, recall, and use past experience. Imagination, the power to form images, possibilities, plans, and meanings beyond what is immediately present. Reason, the power to compare, analyze, infer, judge evidence, and reach conclusions. Emotion, the feeling life of the mind, including joy, fear, anger, love, grief, hope, and concern. Will, the choosing power of the mind, by which a person forms intentions and acts toward a purpose. Self-awareness, the power by which the mind knows itself, reflects upon its own thoughts, and examines its own conduct. Unconscious processes, the hidden operations of the mind that influence perception, emotion, memory, and behavior without always entering conscious awareness. The mind as an integrated whole. These components do not operate in isolation. Attention affects memory, emotion influences reason, imagination guides decision, and self-awareness disciplines the will. A person's mind is therefore best understood as an integrated system rather than a collection of separate parts. To test the powers of the mind, one must first understand this unity. The mind thinks, feels, remembers, imagines, chooses, and reflects as one living force.
And the phrase just mentioned feels, I made sure to put into parentheses, quotation marks, not parentheses. It's feels on a mental level. It does not feel as we feel ourselves on a human level, on a physical level. I just wanted to notate that for you.
Historical ideas concerning the makeup and origin of the mind. Long before the rise of modern psychology and neuroscience, human beings tried to understand the mind through philosophy, religion, myth, and moral reflection. In many ancient cultures, the mind was not separated sharply from the soul, spirit, breath, or life force. To ask what the mind was often meant asking what gave a person life, identity, memory, conscience, and the power to choose between good and evil. Ancient philosophical views. Among the ancient Greeks, the question of mind was closely connected with the question of the soul. Plato taught that the soul was higher than the body and had a rational part capable of truth, a spirited part connected with courage and honor, and an appetitive part connected with desire. In this view, the best life was one in which reason ruled the lower impulses. Aristotle took a different approach. He viewed the soul not as a prisoner inside the body, but as the form or organizing principle of a living being. For Aristotle, the powers of life, sensation, movement, desire, and thought were functions of the living organism as a whole. The Abrahamic religious traditions. In Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the inner life of a person has usually been understood in relation to God. These traditions commonly teach that human beings possess a soul or spirit given by God, which gives moral responsibility and personal identity. In Jewish thought, words such as nefesh, ruach, and neshama have been used to describe life, spirit, and the deeper God-related dimension of the person. Christianity often speaks of the soul as the immortal moral center of the person, accountable to God and capable of salvation. Islam speaks of the ruh or spirit as breathed by God, and of the nafs as the self that must be purified, disciplined, and brought into peace with divine will. In these traditions, the mind is not merely a thinking machine. It is bound to conscience, worship, obedience, judgment, and destiny. Hindu and Buddhist ideas. In Hindu traditions, the deepest self is often called Atman, an enduring spiritual reality connected with or identical to ultimate reality, Brahman, depending on the school of thought. The ordinary mind, with its desires, fears, memories, and attachments, is often viewed as changeable and limited, while the true self is eternal. Liberation involves seeing beyond the restless surface of the mind to the deeper truth of being. Buddhism, by contrast, is famous for teaching an ata, or no permanent self. It analyzes the person as a changing combination of body, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. From this perspective, suffering arises when the mind clings to a fixed identity. The task is not to discover an eternal personal soul, but to understand the impermanent nature of experience and become free from attachment. East Asian and indigenous perspectives. In many East Asian traditions, the mind has been understood less as a separate substance and more as part of a living harmony among body, breath, energy, nature, and society. Chinese traditions have spoken of vital energy, or qi, and of different aspects of spirit and bodily life. Taoist thought often emphasized balance, simplicity, naturalness, and harmony with the way of things, while Confucian thought emphasized moral cultivation, disciplined conduct, and right relationship. Many indigenous traditions around the world have understood mind, spirit, land, ancestors, and community as deeply connected. In such views, the mind is not isolated inside the individual. It is shaped by relationship, memory, ritual, place, and responsibility. The modern scientific view. Modern science approaches the mind through the study of the brain, nervous system, behavior, language, emotion, and consciousness. Psychology examines mental processes such as attention, learning, memory, motivation, and personality. Neuroscience studies the biological activity that supports these processes. Yet even modern science has not removed the mystery entirely. The mind-body problem remains. Are thoughts merely brain events? Or do they represent a level of experience that cannot be fully reduced to physical activity? The answer is still debated among philosophers, theologians, psychologists, and scientists. Freud and Jung on the workings of the human mind. Sigmund Freud viewed the human mind as a layered and conflicted field in which conscious thought is only the surface. Beneath it lies the unconscious, containing desires, memories, fears, and impulses that shape behavior without the person's full awareness. In his structural model, the ID rhymes with lid, the instinctual force seeking immediate satisfaction presses upward with appetite and urge. The ego, the reality-guided mediator, tries to arrange life in practical terms. And the superego, the internal moral authority, judges, restrains, and demands obedience to conscience and social law. For Freud, the mind works through tension. Desire struggles with restraint. Memory hides behind repression. And the ego uses defenses to protect itself from anxiety.
Once again, I have to put a footnote into this video about the text. When the narrator says or reads, in his structural model, the ID, and then I put in a little phrase, rhymes with lid, what the narrator is incapable of doing is reading the word id, ID, which is one of the key concepts in the Freudian vocabulary, psychiatry, psychology, and so forth. And that is why it came across so oddly to your listening ear. Let's continue.
Carl Jung accepted the importance of the unconscious, but he enlarged its meaning. He taught that the psyche contains the conscious ego, the personal unconscious, and a deeper collective unconscious, a shared symbolic inheritance of humanity. Within this deeper layer are archetypes, universal patterns such as the mother, hero, shadow, wise old one, and self, which appear in dreams, myths, religions, and imagination. Jung believed the mind seeks wholeness through individuation, the lifelong integration of conscious and unconscious life. Where Freud often looked backward to early conflict and repressed desire, Jung looked inward and forward toward meaning, symbol, and the unfolding of the whole person. Seen through the light of Sakshi, witnessing awareness, Freud and Jung both enter the inner temple by different doors. Freud teaches the seeker to notice hidden conflict, instinct, guilt, and defense. Jung teaches the seeker to notice symbol, dream, shadow, and the call toward wholeness. Yoga listens to both, yet asks a final question. Who is aware of conflict, dream, symbol, desire, and conscience? In that question, psychology meets contemplation, and the study of the mind becomes a path toward the witness. What these traditions have in common. Although traditions differ, many agree that the mind is central to human life. It is the place of thought, moral struggle, desire, memory, imagination, worship, and self-understanding. Some traditions see the mind as rooted in an immortal soul. Others see it as a changing process. Others view it as part of a larger harmony of life and spirit. Together, these historical ideas show that testing the powers of the mind is more than a mental exercise. It is part of humanity's long search to understand what a person is, where inner life comes from, and how one should live. Sakshi/Exum writings on the mind, witness, and yoga. In the available writings and YouTube transcripts of myself, James H., Exum, writing and speaking as Sakshi, the mind is repeatedly approached not as the final ruler of the person, but as an instrument to be observed, disciplined, clarified, and finally placed under the light of the witnessing self. Sakshi's first YouTube transcript on Atman, the innermost self or soul, identifies the witness within the human body as the silent knower of worldly experience, and it urges the seeker to look inward rather than merely outward. In that spirit, the mind is tested not by pride of intellect, but by the capacity to witness one's own actions, emotional reactions, ignorance, arrogance, desire, and search for righteousness. Sakshi's writings also distinguish the moving mind from pure consciousness. In the comparative study of the superego and consciousness, he frames moral regulation through samskaras, deep impressions left by experience, and through yamas and niyamas, ethical restraints and observances that refine conduct. There, consciousness is not treated as ordinary thought alone, but as sakshibhava, the cultivated attitude of witnessing thoughts and emotions without attachment. This teaching deepens the present discourse. The powers of the mind are not fully known until the seeker can observe the mind without becoming its servant. In Sakshi's reflections on paradox, especially in the synopsis of his yogic philosophy, the relationship between dharma, right alignment with purpose and the greater good, and karma, action and consequence, is essential. A person tests the mind by watching how intention becomes action and how action returns as consequence. Sakshi's approach does not reject the world. It asks the seeker to remain engaged while free from rigid attachment. Thus, the mind becomes mature when it can act responsibly, release possessiveness, and stand as witness amid the changing opposites of success and failure, gain and loss, effort and surrender. In the larger body of Exum/Sakshi writings on Freud, Jung, and yoga, the mind is imagined as a layered interior house. Freud enters the chamber of buried conflict. Jung enters the chamber of symbol and transformation, and yoga asks who is witnessing both chambers. This is a useful bridge for the present text. The mind contains memories, defenses, dreams, archetypes, impressions, and desires, but yoga does not end with analysis. It leads the seeker towards citta-vritti-nirodha, the stilling of mental fluctuations, so that the seer may no longer be confused with the movements being seen. Another Sakshi text on the mind and spirit at death asks whether consciousness is only the flicker of matter or whether matter is an instrument through which consciousness shines. This question belongs directly to any discourse on the powers of the mind. If the mind is only biological movement, then its powers end with the organism. But if the mind is an instrument through which deeper awareness is expressed, then testing the mind becomes a sacred discipline. One learns to honor the brain, refine thought, train attention, purify motive, and awaken to the witnessing light beyond passing mental weather. From these writings, one sentence may be drawn as the governing spirit of the whole inquiry. The mind is a brilliant storyteller, but liberation begins when the story is watched from the seat of the witness. Therefore, to test the powers of the mind in Sakshi's yogic language is to test whether attention can become steady, memory purified, reason humbled, imagination sanctified, conduct aligned with dharma, sustaining truth in action, an identity released into Atman, the deathless inner self. The final test is not whether the mind can dominate the world, but whether it can bow before the light that knows it. In conclusion, to test the powers of your mind is to become both student and examiner of yourself. It is to observe attention, strengthen memory, refine reason, awaken imagination, and discipline the will. The mind grows when it is challenged honestly and guided patiently. A person who studies the mind in this way discovers that its greatest power is not merely to know the world, but to know itself. Bibliography: American Psychological Association, 2026. Reference Guide for Journal Articles, Books, and Edited Book Chapters, 7th edition. APA Style. Aristotle, 1986.
De Anima H.
Loss and Tancred, translation. Penguin Classics. Original work published ca. 350 BCE. Bryant, E. F., 2009. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, a new edition, translation, and commentary. North Point Press. The Bhagavad Gita, E. Iswaran, translation, 2nd edition. 2007, Nilgiri Press. Confucius, 2003. Analects, E. Slingerland, translation. Hackett Publishing. The Dhammapada, G. Franz Dow, translation. 2005, Shambhala. Holy Bible, New Revised Standard Version. 1989, National Council of Churches. Freud, S. 1961. The Ego and the ID, J. Strachey, translation. W. W. Norton. Original work published 1923. Exum, J. H., aka Yogi Sakshi. 2026, The Powers of the Mind. Unpublished manuscript. Exum, J. H., aka Yogi Sakshi. 2025, 2026. Sakshi/Exum Writings on Atman, Sakshibhava, Dharma, Karma, Freud, Jung, Yoga, Mind, Spirit, and Consciousness. Unpublished writings and YouTube transcripts. Jung, C.G., 1968. The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious are F.C. Hull, translation, 2nd edition. Princeton University Press. Lousy, 1963.
Tao Te Ching Te.
C. Lau, translation. Penguin Classics. Plato, 1992. Republic, G. M. A. Group, translation, C. D. C. Reeve, Reverend. Hackett Publishing. Original work published ca. 375 BCE. The Quran, M. A. S. Abdul Halim, translation. 2004, Oxford University Press. The Upanishads, E. Iswaran, translation, 2nd edition. 2007, Nilgiri Press. Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. 2026, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Stanford University. Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. 2026, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. University of Tennessee at Martin.
Well, as you heard, and maybe you were bored stiff by that listing under bibliography. I keep a card index, so to speak, which is now a file index in my computer, of reliable sources on various subjects that I have and do utilize in my research to write my discourses, which this is one, to later turn into videos and upload to YouTube. As I said, that might have bored some people silly listening to all that data, but the more scholarly types or the researcher types or fellow writers out there, I just gave you a rather short, not extremely long, a rather short bibliography of the sources I use. And I use them over and over, not the same ones, but sources over and over and over in various texts. I don't always list them. But I thought in this case it would be interesting. I think I've done it maybe 2 or 3 times to list the bibliography sources. So there's the video. It's gone a little bit over 25 minutes thanks to the inclusion of the bibliography names and information. I don't always, like I said, I won't always do that, but sometimes I include it because I know there are researchers out there who would like to know where I get my data, and you can fact check me as always. This is just my style to create this way. So I'm getting ready to close down, and in closing I will say to all of you, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, share it with friends and families, colleagues and associates, or just pass it on in casual conversation. I think that was number 109 of my videos, and I've created all of those in about a year and so many months. I did take about 6 months off in there when my iPhone failed to work properly, and then I had to come up with this new way of recording and videotaping my discourses, and it seems to be working pretty fine. It's a nice little camera, it's portable and so forth. So I'm gonna let you go. As I said, I hope you enjoyed this, and in my usual closing I will say, be good to yourself, be good to others, and be good to strangers. And remember the chaos that we all collectively seem to be dealing with, not only in the United States under the current representatives in Washington, but all over the world because of some of the activities of the Washington representatives. It's not the best time economically or psychologically to be alive, but it's tolerable, and maybe that's the point. They want us to get used to it. But this, like any other bad period in history, this too shall pass. Have faith in that, my brothers and sisters. And good night to you, and thank you for coming.